So now I'm pleased to introduce the last panel of the day. So gentlemen, if you can all make your way to the front of the room. So please hold the mic really close to your mouth. Okay. Where's the rest of your flock, man? Should I go? Excuse me, Mark Rios, paging Mark Rios. Okay. Are you going to start up here first? Yep.
All right. No pressure. It's Friday at 3:30. We're going to have a lot of fun up here. It's been a great day learning all about the great things going on around our region. And it's a lot of fun to be talking about actions and things that people are doing. Lee and Sarah are doing amazing things in Sarasota County. Hillary, Pasco, that's awesome. My name is Taylor Ralph. I'm the founder and president of Real Building Consultants. Where is the clicker? Is this the clicker? Green button? Okay. See if I have control here. Is there a back? Yeah. Maybe. Maybe it just switched. In the wrong green button. Okay, there we go. All right. So really glad to be here. Our topic today is design and construction of affordable and resilient housing. We have some really great speakers here for you. To my left is Mitch Rosenstein. He is the founder and principal of Green Mills Group, co-founder and principal of Green Mills Group. Gary McPherson, development manager at Atlantic Pacific Communities, and Mark Rios, director of development at Stonebeg US. My company, Real Building Consultants, we are a sustainability consulting and planning firm. We work with owners, developers, design build teams, and municipalities to help them create responsible, efficient, and healthy buildings and communities. We are very fortunate to be working on a lot of hallmark projects going on throughout our community, including Water Street, work at University of South Florida on multiple campuses, University of Tampa. We are also working on affordable housing projects with the Housing Authority and Related Urban. And we also are having fun working with the City of Tampa on their Climate Action and Equity Plan, as well as Pinellas County's Sustainability and Resiliency Action Plan. So our firm really tries to focus on holistically integrating sustainability into projects. And so in a very simple, beautiful design here, obviously resiliency and sustainability are very complex things. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There really isn't a silver bullet that's going to get us there. Not one decision is going to get us there. It is the integration and holistically looking at these things to ensure that the projects that we're working on are thinking through not just the energy efficiency, but the health and wellness, as well as equity, as well as resiliency, obviously, in our community. And so we're going to learn today about some really awesome projects going on around our state and beyond. And we're excited to share that with you. I'm also here representing the Urban Land Institute and ULI Tampa Bay. Those of you that are not familiar with ULI Tampa Bay, it's one of the premier real estate organizations in the country, if not the world. And it's really a wide-ranging group of cross-discipline real estate professionals, from government officials, planners, engineers, architects, contractors, and developers. And we, over the last probably 8 years, have been working through what we call technical advisory panels, which is an opportunity for your local governments to talk to Jenna in the back. Jenna, you want to raise your hand there? Jenna Wiley from ULI Tampa Bay. We have been working with the City of St. Pete, City of Tampa, Pasco County, a lot of other municipalities throughout our region on specific projects. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. This first slide is about the City of St. Petersburg's Realizing Resilience Report. This was a project with Sharon Wright and Mayor Kreisman, the City of St. Petersburg. ULI Tampa Bay brought in experts from around the country to look at the issue of equity and resilience focused on citywide issues, but also specifically the South St. Petersburg area. And some of the recommendations that were made have actually, over the course of Sharon's tenure with City of St. Petersburg, been carried forward and are represented in a lot of the planning documents and updates going on around sustainability and resiliency in the City of St. Pete. On top of that technical advisory panel, and very relevant obviously to today's discussion, ULI Tampa Bay also partnered with the City of St. Pete to study their coastal high hazard area and coming up with recommendations on how increased density could be allowed in the coastal high hazard area. Many of the recommendations and ideas that were brought forward as not only incentives, but requirements in order to allow for increased density or development in some areas are helped to inform some of the code changes that were made for that coastal high hazard area development. And one of our most recent technical advisory panels was around affordable housing with the City of Tampa. Mayor Castor and the City of Tampa have a bold goal of developing 10,000 affordable housing units. And they asked ULI Tampa Bay to bring in experts from around the country. During COVID, we did it over Zoom, but normally these experts are on the ground in the field, working with the staff and all of the different community advisors and people within the community to help inform the work. But some other recommendations were made here for Mayor Kreisman's Achieving Affordability or Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow goal with affordable housing are here on the slide. And it was a really successful technical advisory panel and report that many of the city officials are now using to kind of help galvanize support within the organization as well as with the electeds to help make changes in their municipality. So some great opportunities if you all do have specific projects or challenges that you think ULI could be a resource for, feel free to ping Jenna after this talk here. Okay, so back to my conversation around resiliency and sustainability. Obviously, the issues of resiliency are not just about the four walls of a building or the four walls of a project. Housing costs is just but one cost that people are facing in their overall cost of living. And I think it's important not to focus just today on how you make a building more energy efficient, how you make a building more resilient. It's also about where the building is located, how that building interacts with the community around it, who it serves, how those people are getting to and from work, how do they have access to clean, healthy food, clean water, all of those kinds of things. And I think some of our speakers today will talk about some of those issues in their projects and the ways they're addressing them. And it's been really fun to listen to everyone else speak today as well. So I appreciate all of the insight. And I think the really fun thing that we're, over the last 15 years, I've been working in green building, sustainability, et cetera. And I have never seen such a change in direction and coming from funding sources and the market and obviously our governments now. People are really focused on the issues of sustainability and resiliency, climate change, adaptation, mitigation, et cetera, and making the connection finally that, more efficient buildings equal a lower cost of living, which help our community in a multitude of ways. And so it's in the headlines. There's tons of information coming out. We're seeing it from all of our clients that are coming to us and saying, our investors are asking us, what do we do? Please help us. And this is a sad truth, is that sustainability and efficiency features are very easily value engineered out of projects. Budgets are tight. Material costs are going up, et cetera. It's very easy to say, well, let's go with a lower efficient mechanical system. Let's go with a less efficient insulation package. Let's go with a less efficient windows, et cetera. And we really work hard using all of our energy modeling tools and all of our knowledge on return on investment scenarios and helping our clients think through how they're going to tackle it to ensure that those value engineering decisions do not cut the energy efficiency of a project or water efficiency of a project. And really what we try to help our developer clients and institutional owner clients, et cetera, see is that over time, this actually makes their project more valuable in many different ways, depending on if they're long-term holders or they're going to flip out of the project or whatever. That's a financial reality we have to help adjust our guidance to. But our goal by using third-party green building standards like LEED and NGBS and other standards, we are able to kind of work to mitigate any sort of impact to the actual performance of these projects. And a lot of times we actually help them integrate more solar, for instance, where as typical developers might say, well, that's just going to cost a lot more money. We actually help them see how that actually improves the value of the investment from day one. So a lot of fun, and I'm excited to hand this off now over to Mitch.
All right. We're almost there, guys. We go back. My name is Mitch Rosenstein with Green Mills Group. We've talked a lot about some very big topics today. I'll try to stay off a soapbox, but I make no promises. The self-serving stuff first. We're a boutique company based in Fort Lauderdale, but we have a strong presence here in this MSA from Citrus County down south. We've had a lot of success, and we've also been, kicked in the teeth now and again in developing our communities, but we've learned a lot along the way, and we're proud of that. I think most of you know this, and you can't see the slide. For some reason, it got jumbled, but this is the recently published Tampa St. Pete Clearwater HUD income and rent chart. Most of our properties cater towards individuals and families earning 80% and less of the median income. There was some talk before about what is affordable housing, what is workforce housing, and the various levels. I think we should just simplify it for a second, right? Affordable housing is housing that is affordable. And what that means, generally speaking, is that we shouldn't be spending more than 30-ish% of our gross income on shelter and utilities. And the way the latest HUD median income chart worked out for this MSA is that a family of two here in St. Pete, a single parent, can earn $52,000 a year and be at the 80% AMI income level and live in tax credit housing, low income tax credit housing, right? So again, back to the theme, this affects everybody. This affects all of us, right? These are our family members. These are us. These are our teachers, our cops, our firemen. And that's who we're trying to house because they can't afford to live here. Okay. Our panel was about how do we build energy efficient housing that's also affordable. And it's really hard, right? And it's not rocket science, right? If we have capped rents, right, we generate less revenue. With less revenue and less NOI, we have less leverage, less ability to source debt. Less debt means fewer sources in our developments, which leads to a gap, okay? Not rocket science. So what do? How do we develop and preserve affordable housing that's still energy efficient when we have capped rents? Well, guess what? Our insurance costs aren't capped. Our utilities costs aren't capped. So it's really hard to do this. And shocker alert, spoiler alert, it requires subsidy. It requires a lot of help from local governments, cities, counties, state governments, and even federal subsidies. That's how we balance our budgets in the affordable housing world. But we have to be good stewards of public subsidy. And I'll tell you, Green Mills, we go through an analysis for every one of our developments because I'll show you in a second, we think we go above and beyond with regard to design aesthetic, but also green design, green and energy efficiency incorporation. And we think about the additional cost, just as Taylor said, the additional cost of those features, right? If we didn't do certain features, could we build one or two more units? Because oftentimes we're actually not building to max density because we're subsidy constrained. We're essentially building the number of units based on how much subsidy we're able to get. And it's a very tricky analysis. It's very hard to do because you want to build something beautiful. You want to build something that your residents and the community and the stakeholders and the elected officials and the staff are all proud of, but you also want to build as much of it as possible. So how do we do this? How are we good stewards of public subsidy and still incorporating energy efficiency features? Well, it's a balancing act. It takes balance. We can't overdo the energy efficiency features. We can't overdo it, right? As much as we'd want to, we can't. We seek out the most practical and pragmatic options with the best bang for the buck, and we're willing to leave some of our own profit in the developments in order to build nicer, more efficient communities. Now I get to humble brag. This is a community we built here in St. Petersburg in the historic Kenwood neighborhood. When we first started attending community meetings, community association meetings, we almost got run out of town. This is a true story. And we proposed a denser community. Ultimately, it got scaled back, but we built it nonetheless at 53 units. This is the smallest community that we built, that we have in our portfolio. We're very proud of it. And it ended up earning us a lot of credibility with the community. And that's really important to us. And you can see we incorporate local aspects and local aspects of aesthetic into all of our designs. This is Burlington Post. It's catty-corner to Burlington Place, also in the historic Kenwood neighborhood of St. Petersburg. 86 units reserved for families. I'm sorry, for seniors. And we're really proud of this. Back to that balance, you know, we don't build 1,000 square foot one-bedroom units. We don't use real hardwood in our communities, right? We're using more energy efficient, but also more cost-effective materials. But that doesn't mean that it has to be unattractive and look like a box, right? We work really hard to achieve this. The next community, is in this region. It's Forest Ridge, which is in the Beverly Hills, Hernando area of Citrus County. As with most of our communities, you can see we have a solar array on the clubhouse here. This is a seniors community also. This site is adjacent to a Publix anchored shopping center. I don't need to tell you how phenomenal that is for our residents. This is a community we recently completed called Colonnade Park in the city of Inverness, also in this region. You know, we work really hard to make these indistinguishable from market rate communities. And all of the units at the properties I've just shown you are reserved for individuals and families, and in some cases, supportive housing residents at 80% or less of the median income. This is Midtown Lofts in Lakeland. The city of Lakeland own a property. We suggested to them that they put it out for RFP. We won the RFP, and we developed 80 units, bit of a more modern aesthetic. This is actually a mixed income community. It's a mix of market rate and 80% AMI and below affordable housing. We're really proud. We face a lot of naysayers still, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit. The best thing you all can do with neighborhood opposition is drag them to other newer, nice, affordable housing communities. That is the best tool we have in changing perceptions. Let's face it, a lot of that is rooted in racism. I know that ain't a fun thing to say, but it's true. And we have to combat it, and we're working towards it. So our green initiatives, and I'll wrap up. It starts at a business level. We have to be intentional with our goals. We have to prove them out with testing. We have to invest the overhead and the expense in all of that modeling and the tailors of the world, right? To help us make sure that we're building and achieving energy efficiency goals. On the project level, we work with the tailors and the design professionals early on, very early on in that intentional way. And we make sure that we clearly define the goals to the general contractors. We want the GCs to be responsible for these achievements too. So we force them to be a part of this process. We do regular modeling, ongoing modeling early, in the middle, and as we're leasing up. And I debated whether or not I was gonna put this bullet point in there. We ain't doing LEED Platinum, I'll tell you that much, right? We're happy about National Green Building Bronze, Florida Green Building Bronze, right? Or the HERS ratings. Again, we have to be good stewards of public subsidy. And so it would be overdoing it for us, in my humble opinion, to try to build net neutral communities at this point. There's not enough subsidy for us to be able to do it, and we want to build more homes. On the community and resident level, we typically enjoy savings on the utilities cost. This was a topic on an earlier panel, 15 to 40%, both in the common areas, the properties bills for the clubhouses and public areas, right? But also in our residents' homes. They have lower bills because we're using all Energy Star rated appliances, low flow fixtures, energy efficient appliances and fixtures. So they're saving money too. Not only do they have capped rents, but they're then also saving money on utilities. And we have solar arrays at the vast majority of our properties. Unfortunately, not the best bang for the buck on the solar arrays, but we do them, we love them. For one thing, it's fun for me to be able to talk about them, but it really does imbue a sense of pride on the community level. Our residents love the solar arrays that we have on our properties. They think they're cool. And if nothing else, it's a subliminal reminder for all of us and our residents to be mindful of the utilities that they're using in the units, right? Not to run the laundry equipment all day long or to run bathtubs all day long. That's not to say that they do, they don't, but it's a nice reminder, right, that we care and they care too. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Rios, Director of Development for US Stoneweg. I'm hoping you have a couple of hours. Now I'll make this short. I know it's Friday afternoon. So start off. Before I tell you a little bit about Stoneweg, I wanted to first mention that we recently published our first ESG annual report, really benchmarking our performance across our portfolios. And I also want to, this is my opinion, to successfully implement sustainability and ESG standards, it really has to be a two-pronged approach. It needs to come from the bottom at the property level, but it needs to be encouraged and supported by the CEO or the executive team. So before I tell you about Stoneweg, I wanted to try to convince you that sustainability and resiliency is not a new idea, and that through smart and intentional design, it can be incorporated into affordable housing. So I'm sure you all recognize this famous site. This is Machu Picchu in Cusco, Peru. But really what I wanted to note in this project, in this site, is the farming techniques, the terraces cut into the mountainside. So the farmers, the Incas, found a way to be able to grow crops on a terrain that's just very difficult to grow anything. So they were able to grow quinoa, potatoes. And they did this, and they irrigated this by canals and cisterns. And so the retaining walls too kind of served a dual purpose. Not only did it prevent avalanches, but it also actually absorbed heat during the day. And that heat was then dispersed at night and actually kept those plants alive. This is another famous iconic building, one of my favorites, Taliesin West in Scottsdale, Arizona, designed by the famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright in 1937. He was really ahead of his time. Some features to note as well is the building itself is beautiful, but the use of materials, translucent roofing materials to let natural lighting in, large expansive breezeways, reflective pools to really kind of cool those breezeways as well, and a use of natural materials. Then I think you all recognize this. This is the Florida Cracker House. You probably see this more in northern Georgia, northern Florida and southern Georgia. Some of the characteristics of this house that are used in passive solar energy design, it's an elevated roof, using local materials. Again, a lot of the cladding was pine, a lot of the flooring was hard pine, usually wraparound porches to create shade, and then shotgun corridors to really take advantage of cross ventilation. So about Stoneweg. We were founded in 2016 by our CEO, Patrick Richard. We're a Swiss-based firm, but our US headquarters are in downtown St. Pete. We're a real estate investment firm with a focus on acquisition and development of multifamily assets, mainly workforce housing. We currently have 14,000 units, own 14,000 units in 15 states. On the development side, we have 3 projects in the pipeline, and our goal is to build 1,000 units every year for the next 5 years. So what are our objectives in our existing portfolio? One is we try to enhance resident life. And how do we do that? We try to offer our residents financial tools like Esusu. So those tenants that might not have any prior credit experience or history, this will now allow them to have some credit history with lenders. Also, we're very selective on who we work with. We believe everybody is a stakeholder, everybody down to the property manager. So these property managers really need to drive our ESG commitments. And then we measure this through resident satisfaction surveys. So we want to know how we're doing. Second, we try to integrate sustainability at the portfolio level. So we do this by green building technologies certifications. And so EV charging stations, that's a mandate that we're going to try to implement at each one of our sites. Implementing a climate resilience program. We are using, I think it's Moody's to help us create this program. And then achieve accountability and transparency and trust. This is really benchmarking. And how are we doing this? It's through Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which really helps us to gauge the amount of energy that we're using at each one of our sites. So in new development or new construction, we use a lot of these same objectives. But the advantage in new construction is that you really can manipulate design. You have an influence on the design. So a lot of those passive solar design techniques, orientation of the building, orientation of the windows, the fenestrations, those go a long way. Not having conditioned corridors, but breezeways, stormwater management system, but you can also include solar panels, as Mitch was mentioning, and a lot of native landscaping, community gardens if you have the space so that you can have the residents actually be able to grow vegetation and things that they can actually garden from. This is Lake Maggiore Apartments. We had a groundbreaking last week, a big milestone for us. So this is one of our first projects. Thank you. 330 units. It's block and plain construction. It is located on the south side. It does have 66 workforce housing units. It's a 20-month construction schedule. This is a site plan. I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell, but there is a community garden. It's roughly 8,000 square feet of community gardens. Then also within the clubhouse itself, we carved out a space, a community events space, so that for neighborhood associations, if they need a place to meet, they now have a place to meet rather than meeting in fields and such. So this is something that we're trying to do, really engage the community. This is Old Jennings Apartments. We actually don't have a name for it. It's just located right now on Old Jennings Road, so we're calling it Old Jennings Apartments. This is located just right outside of Jacksonville and Middleburg. You can see it's just a beautiful structure, more of that Florida coastal type architecture, but it's going to incorporate a lot of the same objectives and strategies as Lake Maggiore. And here's the site plan. And this is our third project. This is also on the south side in St. Pete. This is at Coquina Key Plaza. We don't have a name for it yet, so we're just going to refer to it as Coquina Key Redevelopment Project. This is still in the conceptual phase. We're working with the city regarding density and the use, but it will be a multi-use project. It will have a retail component to it, multifamily as well. We're hoping really this will help revitalize the south side. We're really proud of this project. So in closing, there's two things that I want you to take away from what I just talked about. Really, sustainability doesn't have to be unrealistic, and it can be affordable. Again, through passive energy design, you can orientate the windows a certain way, arrange the buildings in a certain way, and you can make a building efficient. And secondly, if you really want to incorporate ESG strategies into successfully into a company's policy, it must be two-pronged. It does need to happen at the ground level, but it needs to be supported and encouraged by the CEO and the executive team. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary McPherson with Atlantic Pacific Communities, the development subsidiary of Atlantic Pacific Companies. Just a little bit about Atlantic Pacific. Fourth generation family-owned company. We primarily develop affordable housing. We're vertically integrated. We have our own general contractor, development arm, and property management. So we really control the full life cycle of any development, and we're really involved in all the communities we operate in, from kind of conceptual phases all the way through kind of long-term ownership of the properties. So I just wanted to kind of go through some of our projects and talk about some of the things we were able to achieve on kind of energy efficiency, sustainability, resiliency measures, kind of how we were able to do that. So we've been able to achieve some pretty lofty goals, but they came at quite a bit of a price, and you know, all the stakeholders in the deal really had to come together to make it work. So I'll start with Northwest Gardens. This is a 5-phase, 759 unit neighborhood redevelopment in northwestern Fort Lauderdale. This is a partnership with the Housing Authority of the City of Fort Lauderdale. This is one of our early deals with them. We've done 14 all told, but this project is really kind of one of the jewels in the crown of developments we've done, because it is the first development to achieve the LEED neighborhood certification. So every phase of this project achieved LEED Silver or LEED Gold. And they're all garden style buildings. They have all sorts of energy related features, but I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the neighborhood itself, because it was, you know, it's one of the first ones in the country to ever achieve this, but and it took a lot of kind of help from gap sources and all sorts of things. These are tax credit financed properties. Some of these phases had 4 and 5 layers of subsidy on them, payments in lieu of taxes with local governments. A lot really came together, but some cool things, you know, we were able to do. We're put a community gardens in each phase where folks could actually grow their own food, because this is kind of area of Fort Lauderdale. Certain pockets were food deserts. You didn't really have great access to a ton of you know, high quality food, grocery stores really close by. So this was something, kind of hence the name Northwest Gardens, we implemented, and ultimately has even spurred businesses from, you know, some of the residents actually growing food and selling them to businesses around the community. So really nice project there. Some other things we've been able to do is kind of line our streets with bioswales, so you can kind of handle a little bit more stormwater, things like that, but you're also improving the landscape and shading the areas, have nice wide sidewalks, encourage pedestrian use, things like that. We also defined a real central hub in this community, which we thought facilitated much more pedestrian use and better efficiency with transportation. So it gave people a lot better access to the bus system and the areas around it, which is a big feature I think that doesn't get talked about enough is transit when it relates to affordable housing. I think, you know, we focus a lot on, it's like, how efficient is the building itself, which is great, but when you think about sustainability and resilience, one of the most important things that we could be thinking about is putting density around transit, really connecting people to the communities where they work from where they live. And so some of the things we really like to focus on are transit oriented developments. One I'd like to highlight here is Northside Transit Village. This is a partnership with Miami-Dade County. It is connected to the Northside Metro Rail Station. Actually has a big bus loop going into the middle to take folks into the metro station. Has a shared parking garage. So we actually, by activating this area, we're facilitating more use of the transit system in Miami-Dade County, providing great connectivity for our own residents. We've created there's retail components in all these buildings. So we've created kind of its own neighborhood and the ability for most folks to not have to use cars and be able to have an affordable place, connect right into the city, and really ended up being very efficient. All of these buildings were also LEED Silver or better, and they have some nice energy efficient features, some cantilevered eyebrows to provide more shading. So we have insulated windows, things like that, high efficiency appliances, some recycled and local materials, kind of common themes we've all tried to incorporate into our projects to really enhance the efficiency and to a certain degree enhance the aesthetic of the development as well. A couple other ones, unique situation to Florida. Talked a little bit about storm surge, sea level rise. Wanted to highlight a couple of developments we've done in more coastal areas like Fort Lauderdale and Dania Beach. These are Saratoga crossings and Poinciana crossing. And something interesting that we've done there where we've actually elevated the finished floor elevation of these buildings 1 to 2 feet higher than what any code requires, with the thought that as sea level rises over time, we're going to be long-term holders of these assets, that we don't want to be in a situation where you could have your ground floor potentially underwater. And I'm sure you guys have all heard about issues with the storm sewers in Fort Lauderdale, lots of flooding. So we tried to get out ahead of that and get out ahead of potential changes to the FEMA flood maps and really get these buildings a little bit higher, make them a little bit more resilient. And something you can do not at a huge cost. So it wasn't something we, was the biggest challenge, but something to think about long-term as well. And the last one, I just wanted to highlight a cool feature of the Tropicana Field redevelopment. We're on the team that's been preliminarily selected, nothing official yet, but to be a part of the affordable and workforce housing development component. And a cool thing to think about just from a site design perspective, very early on, this development's is proposed to have a total reconfiguration of Booker Creek that kind of snakes through the center of that property and utilize the various grade changes to facilitate having Booker Creek handle all of the stormwater and flood mitigation, from potential storm surge or anything like that. And as you can see, you see a lot of buildings that are higher up and all at different levels around the creek, trying to use the natural contours of what's there, expand Booker Creek to handle more stormwater, add more wetland vegetation, and kind of create a great water feature that's also a really resilient feature of the development as well. So I just wanted to highlight a nice kind of local project, but very, very conceptual at this stage. But yeah, and that's I think all I have here. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so I want this to be a two-way conversation. I'm going to start up here, but you all start thinking about the questions you want to ask. But we have a room full of government officials, planners, city employees, et cetera. What do you guys, everybody's talking about wanting more affordable housing units and the fact that affordable housing is such an issue in our region. What do you all need from these people in this room here to get more units built quicker? What will make your jobs easier? What can they do to be good partners to you all?
Who's going to be the one of us that says money? Because which one of us is going to
I have
say
a
that?
project at the city.
I
so.
think the cat's out of the bag.
We need subsidy. And now subsidy takes many forms and variations. Density boosts, parking reductions, impact fee waivers, expedited permitting, setback reductions, height variances. Those are all sort of development forms of possibility for property tax relief.
Property tax. Good one.
So that we can leverage more debt. Those are really development related subsidies, but then of course, monetary subsidies. That's really the key, right? With the absolutely crazy construction cost climate we're dealing with. I don't need to tell you, costs are out of hand, right? And with our capped rents, right, we are source limited, but our costs keep going up. We need more subsidy. That's the short answer. We need more subsidy.
Gary, Art?
Yeah, I think really outside of just financial subsidy, really the development subsidy and incentivizing higher density, figuring out ways to kind of open up your zoning codes, things like that to provide a bigger incentive for affordable housing. Density bonuses are huge. If we are able to generate more income, we can build more, we could build more housing, we could source more debt, we can, support bigger properties. That's really the biggest takeaway. I think anything that would allow us to build more and more efficiently on properties is definitely going to be a help.
Yeah, pretty much what Mitch and Gary said.
Land.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mark. One of us was also going to mention land. There's a lot of publicly owned land, city, county, governmental agency land. And many of the local governments in this region have already taken steps to find ways to free them up, and then potentially put them out for RFP or work directly with developers and developing nonprofits to create affordable and workforce housing on the land. That's a huge one, especially where we're land constrained. Sorry, Mark.
No, I think you hit it on the head, both of you. I mean, more incentives, increased density, lessen height restrictions. That would help us. Incentives, financial incentives during pre-development. That's huge. Yeah, all of it would be beneficial. But I have to give kudos to St. Pete and Pinellas County. They have been progressive than the other counties that we've been working in.
So we'll just go to the audience. We're going to keep it going. So yeah, no, please.
I was gonna just ask if you looked at Pasco County, because on behalf of Mr. Mariano, I'd like to invite you. No height restrictions, which we're looking at the West Market development.
It's like Dubai up there. Pasco County. So
Thank you.
yeah, Commissioner Overman.
Yeah, I have a similar kind of, offer. We do all of those. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we help you know that we do all those things? Because every single thing you ask for, it's like, we do that, we made this, we get that, we have land.
Do you need to be told where to do it? Does that help? Where you say, hey, this is where we want it? Or, but with public infrastructure, i.e. transportation and or placemaking, like,
It's my understanding there's a railhead that the Clearwater line actually goes down and we've taken that.
Yeah,
Before you answer that, could you just repeat that? So we
Oh,
can
I'm
hear it?
sorry. Okay. Okay, yeah, I was looking at your last illustration that showed the potential for the redevelopment of the Rays area where the Tropicana Stadium is. And it's my understanding, because I've been working on regional transportation, so I kind of have an inside scoop, but I don't know exactly where it lands.
Yeah.
Were you informed that there is a railhead that runs right up underneath Tropicana Stadium, is my rumor milled? And have you taken that into consideration in any potential designs?
So I hadn't heard that specifically, but trying to to improve connectivity to transit and all of the streets there is going to be a major priority of that master plan.
Excellent. And say, oh, so how does a county help the development industry understand that every time we ask, what is it going to take? And you answer just the answers you just gave me. How do we figure out how to develop a better partnership? What would you suggest?
I would say, to the extent we can make land available, that's also one. Yeah, so
So the size of the parcels, yeah, make a big difference, right? It's hard for commercial developers to build infill type affordable housing. It's really hard for us to do that. There are a lot of very qualified small developers and nonprofits that do that. And so we tend to focus on larger parcel of land, which shrinks the pool of developable properties. That said, unfortunately, the numbers still have to work. So Hillsborough County, for example, has very talented housing staff, as do the other local governments here, clearly.
Good check, good check.
Thanks, appreciate that. And no, thanks. And so working with developers to explore menus of options for each property is really important with the housing staff, right? One thing we're wary of, take this, I guess, with a grain of salt, is getting RFP'd and RFQ'd to death. It's a very taxing process for developers. Oftentimes there's a perception that some local governments have chosen partners already, and that limits, whether the perception is real or not, that limits the potential partners that you'll have coming to you. So I guess maybe that's a bit of a gripe more than a suggestion, but continue to do what you do, continue to have open arms, and good developers will find you with good opportunities.
Hey, good presentation. Love what you guys are doing. When you talked about mixed market projects, like where 80% is affordable and the rest is not, how's that designed? Is that stratified? Do the 20% go up to the penthouse and everybody else is down below? Or how do you design that?
Yeah, I can take this one. Mark, you want to take it?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so on a true mixed income, affordable market rate property, it's truly mixed. There's no separation of quality of apartments or amenities available to anybody. And it's pretty much indistinguishable from a market rate, unrestricted community. You'll have just some folks that their rent is restricted to at a certain level of rent that's affordable to their AMI bracket. And ultimately, that becomes the mix ultimately becomes, whatever you can, make financeable and kind of balance the numbers with. But at the end of the day, it's becomes nearly indistinguishable from a normal market rate property.
Yeah, great response, great question. We have to reasonably intersperse the various units by their AMI designations throughout the property. And what that means, that's a fancy way of saying we can't put the lowest median income tenants on the ground floor, all in the studios and one bedrooms. So the AMI levels, be they 30%, 60%, 80%, 120%, or market rate, have to be as reasonably as possible allocated by unit type, studio 1, 2, 3, 4, by floor and by square footage. Most financing, most affordable housing centric financing requires that reasonable interspersing.
One thing, I know we have another question. I'm going to keep it, we'll come right back to you. I don't know if everyone heard, because obviously this is about resiliency, sustainability. We're talking about energy efficiency, right? Every single one of these guys came up here and they're doing third-party green building certifications. The governments, to my knowledge, have no requirements sometimes on that, but I'm putting them all on the spot. If Hillsborough County or some other government said, please achieve a third-party green building certification, NGBS, FGBC, LEED, Green Globes, whatever, what would your answer be? Go, let's go down the line.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so. Well, that means that, I mean, you can build a house, but having a third-party green building certification kind of helps to validate the energy efficiency, water efficiency, maintains a level of quality throughout the whole development. And most developers that we talk with, they're surprised at the lack of any inclusionary zoning requirements or any other requirements in the jurisdiction. There is potential for our jurisdictions, our municipalities to require something out of these developers, and they're not going to run away. So let's think about that as how we're integrating sustainability requirements into these goals. So we're ensuring that the housing that we are delivering through this RFP, RFQ process, or land or whatever, you can put requirements on them.
Yeah, and I'll say most, public-private partnerships we've done in South Florida have some sort of string attached to some level of energy standard, whether it be LEED or NGBS. It is fairly common that as you start to ascend in heights, then there is usually a give and take in kind of economics to balance that out.
Be right back. Ramona.
Kind of have to force the general contractor to, engage in the process. So when you say force, is it education? Is it lack of commitment or investment on their part? Is it cost that's driving their bottom line much more than it is for you? Because I heard you say that you're willing to leave a profit in the project because you're so vested. And I'm glad that Taylor highlighted the fact that you're all doing LEED, which you don't have to, but that really says something about your commitment. So I really want to get a perspective on the GC process and how you're doing that building, if you would. And Mark, you said you full cycle, so you can control the project. So maybe your answer might differ from what Mitch might say.
I think our responses would be pretty similar. I mean, I can't speak for Mark, but general contractors, right? They're businesses too. And it's important, especially in a tumultuous climate, and we are in one right now. It's important to mitigate risk. And so there's a negotiation process between developers and contractors, or contractors and their subs, where they want to qualify out certain aspects of their jobs, of their roles, of what they've got to do, right? They're part of the development. And so part of that qualification negotiation process, I'll give you a very quick example, right? We're developing an 8-story tower in the city of Fort Lauderdale. Half the units are reserved for formerly homeless folks. We just got a change order from the general contractor because we changed the paint colors. Our nonprofit partner wanted to change the paint colors. And it wasn't a nothing change order. Sure enough, we go back to the GC outlines and specs within a very protective form of contract, favorable for the owner. And it qualifies the number of paint selections to be used and how many returns the painting subcontractors. So contractors during the negotiation, and they're very good at protecting themselves and mitigating risk. Conversely, we want to put as much responsibility on them as possible. And that's where incorporating the green design energy efficiency practices that we're setting out to do as part of the GC contracts and their requirements early on. That's why it's so important to us.
Has to be done at the beginning, has to be done from day one, cannot be added later.
And can I add as well, Mitch and I were talking about this right before we got up, and we're going through the same process now, working with the general contractors. And the big thing now is escalation costs. And this is something we didn't have to consider in prior projects. I never had to consider that before. And then pandemic language. Really what it comes down to is some type of partnership with the general contractor. They have to have some skin in the game as well. So they need to hold their subcontractors accountable. At what threshold is our escalation and cost validated, right? So, I mean, the market is going to ebb and flow. So it's benchmarking it. It's holding them accountable as well. So they're not just passing all additional costs to us because we hold the coffers. No, it really needs to be a partnership.
CJ?
On the resiliency front, how's your design and construction changing to address the extreme rain or potential storm surge? And what brings it up to mind, I'm out at McDill, the new FEMA flood maps came out, the 100-year flood lines have all moved inland. Do you have any examples of that type of thing affecting your projects, and what are you doing to mitigate that?
Yeah. So the biggest thing we're doing is looking at trying to raise the elevation of our sites. That's the easiest way to get a FEMA map amendment and try to get out of those new flood zones. And that's kind of the number one thing we're doing. Something we've done similarly in Houston. We have a few CDBG DR deals that were funded after Hurricane Harvey with all the flooding in Houston. And we've put in huge detention ponds. These are pretty large sites, 8 to 10 acre sites, but there's like a couple acres of detention. They're really big ponds to try to mitigate any potential flooding that could happen. And then the spoils from digging those ponds were used to try to elevate the site a little bit. It did add the need for some retaining walls, but we ended up not paying to get rid of dirt off of our site and making a much more resilient development.
So I'd like to thank you guys all for staying on and telling us so much great information. I'm going to echo what Sonia said from Pasco County. Please come up and see us at any time. Truly, my question's for Mark. In your presentation, you were doing something about an 8,000 square foot community garden. Was that outside on the roof? Was that on the interior and like where was that?
Yeah,
8,000
sure.
square feet?
That was outside. And actually that fell within the coastal high hazard area. So we couldn't build in that area. So we're trying to use it and utilize it best we can. So let's make a garden out of it.
Okay. Got it.
You're looking at other innovative ways, not just pure raised bed gardens, right, Mark? I mean, you're looking.
No, yeah, we're talking to
Sorry.
Brick Street Farms, right? So maybe hydroponics as well on the site so that we can actually grow a little bit more. So yeah, we're looking outside the box.
Mr. Rios, I just want to thank you for those of you that are here and saw my presentation earlier. I did not reference by name, but I talked about a community garden being located in the coastal high hazard area, and Mr. Rios put his site plan up on the screen for you all to see today. So I was using that as the example in our description earlier. There also has been a question and some comments about base flood elevation line and where that design flood elevation line in that first floor of the building should be located. In the city of St. Petersburg, we do have a 2-foot design flood elevation line, and in that coastal high hazard area for multifamily projects, as an extension of what we were describing earlier, there is an additional requirement to 4 feet above that base flood elevation line. So, Mr. Rios, thanks for having that site plan in there.
Great. Well, thanks for that additional comment. I think we are at the time. Oh, wait. Oh, gosh, you guys are popular tonight. They're like, they're staying.
Keep them
over.
coming. We're here till 7 o'clock. All right. No one can leave though.
Okay. Questions from attendees?
Hi. So thinking a little bit about ways of funding some of these projects, and I'm familiar with some of the affordable housing projects in around New York. I was working on them. And one of the ways that they've been getting some of the developers to capture funds for it is that in New York, at least, you're required to provide heating for their housing. I'm not sure if that's the same here. So I'm just wondering if you were to then take on the cost of utilities as part of rent, would you then be able to utilize those funds to then put into energy efficiency methods like, a passive house, something that you're really getting down to 70% on, like lowering the space conditionings of the
So the question was, can we sort of capture either savings or cost of utilities as almost like additional revenue to then help with financing?
Yeah, if you were
Okay.
to then invest that money into energy efficiency strategies.
Potentially.
right?
So we banks don't really like to underwrite the energy savings from our small solar arrays. We are actually doing a huge solar array at a property we've developed in Lakeland, but for the most part, it's hard to predict, hard to underwrite. As Mark mentioned, the lack of subsidy relating to solar predictable future has made it sort of hard to utilize. The other challenge that we have, and I wish I had a better answer for you, but in the sort of affordable housing world, right, we have capped rents. The rents are meant to include an estimate of utilities costs. So our capped rents are really the cost of shelter, housing, and utilities. Most of the time, we pay for the property pays for our residents' water and sewer bills. Now, that's a little bit misleading to say because we can charge a slightly higher net rent. And our residents pay their own power costs typically. That's a long way of saying, because of our capped rents and our rent structures, it's really hard for us to necessarily capture the benefit of those savings or leverage up a bunch because of it. At least that's been my experience. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
No, I feel the exact same way. Underwriting energy savings is really hard. I don't think we've ever been able to get.
Well, on your
there.
common area maintenance costs, right? If you look at your utility bill versus.
Only
Yeah,
slight
right.
advantages on
Right.
utility allowances, really just from having a slightly more efficient building. But like solar is a great example. That energy savings that you're going to get, paid back from, FPL or something from replenishing the grid with your solar energy, we're not really able to underwrite. We've done solar on a couple of projects. There used to be rebate programs like in the city of Austin in Texas, where that really subsidized the cost. And we have a whole solar array on a pretty large building that costs, a few $1,000s because of the rebates. Those days have since ended. So it's a lot harder now to underwrite any of the savings that you'd get.
Right, yeah, we're in the same boat as Gary. But we're not including it in our underwriting, but our director of sustainability is here. So it's probably something we are going to look at in the future.
We're making the project solar ready. And then I also heard him say, it's going to happen.
Yeah. So
Right, Tom?
You heard.
That's right. I think Wall had one. Wall?
Hey, thanks. I'll be brief, but for the folks on the public side of this, commissioners, planners, I heard some struggles about NIMBYism when you concentrate affordable housing project and find a place for it. I mean, really, when you go this approach and just make a place the way American cities are made, where everyone's mixed up, you avoid NIMBYism, it goes away. Everybody wants this approach, right? Where the affordable housing is part of your inclusionary zoning. You require that any new development has a percentage of affordable housing, and that's how it's done in New York City. So I want to share that with you, that you don't have to spend time on NIMBYism anymore. You can now invest in finding those large public tracts and require affordable housing percentages, and they want to do it because they want the economy to be diversified, right? So next question for the team here, the development team. I've worked with APC. I know that their holds are long-term. They operate their properties that they develop 10 years or more. I'm new to meet the other development teams. Typically, what are your holds? Are you building and flipping, or are you long-term and operating?
My entire career, I've been developing affordable and workforce housing. My partner and I started Green Mills 10 years ago. And we have a pretty good success rate in a relatively short amount of time. And I am grateful for that, absolutely grateful. We have no intentions whatsoever to divest, to sell anything we build. There are circumstances where we'll partner with nonprofits, especially on our supportive housing communities. And they will technically own a majority of certain partnership interests, and that's by design. For our portfolio, we don't plan on selling anything. Not only that, I mean, we're relatively young, but from our perspective, we don't want you all to think of us as mercenaries. A fee developer is going to build and then sell and then peace out to the residents, right? That's the last thing we want. Self-servingly, right? We're also building a portfolio that can be redeveloped in the future. So we're not just building new communities, we're also building a pipeline of communities that we want to renovate substantially every 15 to 20 years. And so it was a long answer to a very good short question. We're not selling anything.
No, we're of the same mindset. We're Swiss-based. The Swiss don't sell. So we don't have to build out of block and plank, but we choose to build everything out of concrete. In South St. Pete, in North Florida, it's different. You just don't have the labor force that's familiar with concrete. But if we can, we will.
It's interesting. We heard the comment made of, requiring 5% or more affordable housing in any multifamily or any community development, which I honestly wish I could do and figure out how not to have, a bullseye on my back. So, in knowing your industry as well as you do, what is the likelihood that a county or or city could actually get something like that done here in Florida?
Inclusionary zoning, you mean?
No, I know we are allowed. How do we get it done? Yeah, you have to pay the developer back. I get that part.
Yeah, so I mean, this really dives into sort of the political realm on a, in some ways, a state level, but also on a local level. I'm gonna try to be as diplomatic as possible, but we just got to keep the heat up, right? This is an issue that I mean, Rob Gertis said it ranked #1 as far as public's concern for the city, right? And I think we keep trying, both on local and state levels, and I know that's a nebulous response, but that's my response. Don't give up.
Well, and back to what Mitch said earlier, the public needs to see these new projects that are on par with market rate housing, that are mixed income or even affordable, that have the same amenity structures and finished qualities, et cetera. And I think more and more of that is coming right now, it seems. And all of the housing authorities that we're working with, mixed income is the solution, and mixed use as well, which, back to Walt's point, that makes a community more resilient when you have a mix of incomes and people from different walks of life that can support each other during disaster events or just regular shocks and stressors of our everyday lives. Poor air quality, health issues, lack of access to healthcare or other things like that. It's mixing uses, mixing incomes, and putting these houses in places that are connected by transportation. You're working very hard to try to bring more transportation options to our region, and a lot of other people in this room. We got to get there. We got to get to that point. These guys will build a lot of projects around transit corridors. We just got to build them. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was fantastic. Thank you all so much. So we made it, everybody. Happy almost 5 o'clock on Friday. I just want to thank you all so much. Everyone that stayed till the end here today. Did you get a lot out of it? Did you love it? All right. So I have just a couple of final requests. One, I have a question. Should we do this again? All right, good. So I can count on at least all of you to be in the room when we do this again, right? My next request for you is that earlier we talked about these were on your tables. If you filled them out for us, if you haven't, if you want to take a moment, you could also take them with you and you could email them to CJ if you would like. We would love to gather all of the thoughts. We did record everything, so we will be going back and debriefing. The collaboration and the creativity that was shown here today is just incredible. I want to applaud all of you for hanging in there, there and being so open and just having some really great dialogue. We've got a long way to go, but I think that today was just such a great step forward collectively as the Tampa Bay community. If I leave you with anything, I would say just a few things as an elected official. There's a few of us still in the room. I think maybe we can all agree. These are the issues we have to think big on. These are the issues that we really have to learn to utilize the resources that we collectively have to lean on each other as a community and just be bold. Lean into these issues. Don't be afraid to make those big, bold moves because that's what's going to change our community. That's what our residents deserve. And that is why we are all asked to serve in our various roles. So I just want to thank you all so much for that. I really want to thank all the presenters, the sponsors, the Hilton for hosting us. This was our second event in about a month's time. So thank you to the Hilton, but most of all to the staff. Sean, Ren, CJ. I don't want to leave anyone out. Sarah, I see in the back. Thank you so much. We have such a visionary staff. Our staff at Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council is incredibly impressive. And whenever you are elected and you get asked to serve on a board like this, you don't really know what you don't even know. And the first thing that I was just so impressed with whenever I first started working with them is just how organized, how visionary, and how much they care about our community. So please give them another round of applause. All right, everyone. Well, the weekend is here. Thank you all again so much. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.